What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Defiant Podcast, where we cover the top 5 daily news items across DeFi entertainment and sports.
That's right.
And, we always try to dive deep into these stories and figure out how they all connect and kind of like what it means for the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to see how seemingly completely different things going on in the world can actually paint a bigger picture
Totally, yeah.
when you kind of zoom out and think about it a little bit.
Absolutely. So today, we've got some really interesting stuff to dig into, starting with some big news in the world of digital finance.
Okay.
So Strategy. They've just revealed that they now hold a massive 499,226 Bitcoin.
Wow. It's a lot of Bitcoin.
It's a huge amount.
Yeah.
And they've also hinted that they might even buy more.
Really?
Yeah. Which, I mean, that just shows you how strongly they believe in Bitcoin as a long-term store of value.
Yeah, I mean, if they're willing to put that much money into it, they must really believe in its future.
Exactly. And what's even crazier is that right now, less than 4% of the global population actually owns Bitcoin.
Wow. So we're still very
Super early.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you see a major player like Strategy making these kinds of moves, it really highlights the fact that we're still in the very early stages of adoption.
Right. It's like the Wild West out there.
Yeah. And as access to Bitcoin expands, through easier on-ramps and things like that,
Yeah.
the potential for wider adoption, I mean, it's huge.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
It is. It really makes you think about where things could be headed.
For sure.
And it's not just about individual people holding Bitcoin, in their wallets.
Right.
We've also seen some really interesting material lately talking about Bitcoin as a digital energy network.
A digital energy network.
Yeah, with the potential to facilitate $100 trillion economy.
Wow.
And possibly even act as a core settlement layer for all kinds of AI-driven commerce in the future.
So all those transactions happening behind the scenes.
Exactly. So it's not just about buying and holding Bitcoin. It's about being a part of this whole evolving digital economy.
Yeah, it paints a picture where having some Bitcoin could be like your ticket to participate in this whole new world.
Yeah, and being without it. Well, that raises some interesting questions about, access and opportunity in the future.
Definitely makes you think.
It does, for sure. And speaking of access, one of the things we've been talking about is how people can actually get involved in this broader digital asset space.
Right, because it can seem kind of intimidating.
It can be, yeah. But there are actually some really interesting ways for people to kind of dip their toes in.
Like what?
Well, have you heard of this game, Fishing Frenzy?
Fishing Frenzy? No.
It's on the Ronin network. And it's a Web3 game that's actually gaining a lot of traction.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So they've got over 7,000 active wallets already, and they're seeing tons of on-chain activity, especially during their play to accumulate season.
Play to accumulate so you can actually earn something while playing.
Exactly, and that's what's so compelling about these types of games.
Yeah.
They can be a really accessible entry point into the world of digital assets.
Right, because instead of trying to understand all the ins and outs of DeFi,
Right.
you can just play a game and have fun and maybe earn some crypto along the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's
well,
a
fun.
much more user-friendly on-ramp.
I like it.
Yeah, and it introduces people to the idea of digital ownership and the potential of these digital economies in a way that's fun and engaging.
So it's like a gateway drug to the metaverse.
Kind of, yeah. And, it's not just games that are blurring the lines between these different worlds.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we've also seen that 3 LIV Golf players will be competing in the Open Championship this year.
Interesting.
Yeah, and this is actually a really big deal because it shows how even traditional institutions, like a major golf tournament, are starting to acknowledge and integrate with these newer disruptive forces.
Right. It's kind of like how traditional finance is increasingly interacting with Bitcoin.
Exactly. It's a sign of the times, and it's happening across different sectors.
The old guard is having to adapt.
They are. And, it's not always easy, but it's definitely necessary to stay relevant in this rapidly changing world.
Absolutely.
Now, speaking of adapting to change, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about something that's maybe not as directly related to digital finance or gaming, but still relevant in terms of competitiveness and future positioning.
Okay, I'm listening.
So the USMNT, they recently lost to Canada in the Nations League.
Ouch.
Yeah, it wasn't a great result, and there's been a lot of discussion about the team's development and their ability to compete on the global stage moving forward.
Right, because soccer is becoming more and more competitive globally.
It is.
Yeah.
And, while this might seem like a completely different topic, it actually underscores a similar principle.
Which is?
The need to adapt and evolve to stay ahead of the curve.
God.
Just like the USMNT needs to constantly assess its strategies and make changes to stay competitive,
Right.
traditional sectors in finance and entertainment, they also need to be paying attention to these emerging digital trends.
To stay relevant.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the shifting dynamics and preparing for the future.
Makes sense.
So bringing it all together, we see Bitcoin gaining more and more institutional acceptance.
Yeah.
This massive untapped adoption potential.
Right.
The rise of engaging Web3 economies that could act as on-ramps to this whole new digital world.
I'm with you.
And we see traditional finance and even sports starting to acknowledge and integrate with these new players.
It's all connected.
It really is all these seemingly separate news items. They actually paint a really interesting picture of an interconnected future.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder what else is out there. What other opportunities or challenges are we not even seeing yet?
Exactly. And what role will this whole idea of digital energy and these accessible digital economies play in shaping the future?
Because it's coming, whether we're ready or not.
It is. So it's definitely something to think about.
A lot to ponder.
There is. Thanks for tuning in to the Defiant Podcast.
See you next time.